Zelda fans have been eating well these past few years. We had the long-awaited release of Tears of the Kingdom in 2023, and that was followed up with the surprise release of Echoes of Wisdom in 2024. But what are we going to get next? That is precisely the question I like to throw out there in today's video, and have a look at what comes next for the Zelda franchise, look at what type of game we're going to get, and also highlight what you want too. Well, if you enjoyed the video, then subscribe for more Zelda content and turn on notifications to never miss an update from Triforce Times. Well, 2024 is coming to a close, and that's to go down as one of the most memorable in recent years for Zelda fans, as we had a surprise Zelda game announced and then released this year with Echoes of Wisdom. And that is a big difference from what we've seen before, with Tears of the Kingdom originally announced in 2019, with Nintendo's One More Thing during its E3 presentation. Well, that led to 4 years of build-up, which, to be honest, is quite frankly too much, and it has been really refreshing to hear about the game, and then only a few months later we're actually playing it. Well, Legend of Zelda games take time to develop, especially these days, with development time and costs spiralling. Breath of the Wild's development was about 4 or 5 years, although there is conflicting reports as to when it started. Some say 2013, some say earlier. But in 2016, there was a significant rework due to the Nintendo Switch release, and it releasing both on the Wii U and the Nintendo Switch at the same time. Then Nintendo got started on Tears of the Kingdom, given it was originally going to be DLC for Breath of the Wild, and that puts development of a modern day Zelda game between 4 and 6 years, therefore we may have some time to wait for the next game, unless Nintendo has something up their sleeve for the Switch 2. Well, first of all, we've got the prospect of a third game within the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom mould. We've already had 2 games, why not complete the hat trick? It's probably the least likely of all the options here today, given IGL Numa, the series producer for Zelda, has confirmed there's not going to be a direct sequel to Tears of the Kingdom, and IGL Numa said that would be a sequel to a sequel, which is getting a little bit wild when you think about it. But as I've mentioned previously with Tears of the Kingdom, we're seeking to build on top of the world we created with Breath of the Wild, and really exhaust the possibilities of what we could put into that world. I do think it's the final form of that version of the Legend of Zelda. In that regard, I don't think we're going to be making a direct sequel to a world as such that we've created. Well, the next option is a remake to fill in the gaps between major releases, and that could be an Ocarina of Time remake. Yes, we've already had another version of Ocarina of Time released on the 3DS in 2013, but the Switch 2 could be the perfect place to reintroduce the millions of Zelda fans that have come into the franchise since Breath of the Wild released in 2017. It is possible to go back to the original via Nintendo Switch Online, but compared to a modern gaming experience, well, it can feel a little rough. Nintendo 64 hasn't aged as well as the Super Nintendo, for example, and those controls are very, very clunky indeed. Bringing Ocarina of Time up to modern day standards and giving it a lick of paint could be just the thing, and it could be the perfect Switch 2 release game, given that's likely in the first half of 2025. Well, Samus Hunter 2, a renowned Nintendo industry insider, shared a tweet on November the 8th, teasing something related to Ocarina of Time, with a photo of Link playing the Ocarina. Time has pretty much run out for a Switch 2 announcement this calendar year, so hopefully Nintendo could come back in January 2025 and really show off what they've got ready for the next Nintendo console. Well, the next option is another 2D Zelda game, and this again probably seems a little bit unlikely because of the release of Echoes of Wisdom this year. Nintendo and Grezzo have most likely exhausted their stocks for the time being. Nintendo themselves could be working on a 2D Zelda game, but I think it's much more likely for them to be working on the next 3D installment of the Zelda franchise. IGL Numa did confirm Nintendo would continue to work on top-down Zelda titles very recently in a developer interview just before the release of Echoes of Wisdom. And Aonuma said, "I've always wanted to establish a 2D top-down Legend of Zelda series that's separate from the 3D entries, like the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. The game style and how it feels are completely different when the world is viewed in 3D from behind the character to when the world is viewed from a top-down perspective, and we want to cherish that kind of diversity in the Legend of Zelda series. Well, another option is a remaster of Breath of the Wild, running at a higher frame rate and a higher resolution. So it would be absolutely amazing to see Breath of the Wild running at 60 frames per second in 4K on the Nintendo Switch 2, but at the moment we don't know the tech specs just yet, or whether that would be possible. It was reported in September 2023 that Nintendo went to Gamescom, the largest gaming show in Europe, with a Switch 2 prototype and a version of Breath of the Wild running at a higher frame rate and resolution, although there was no confirmation this would be coming to the Nintendo Switch successor. Huge respected outlets like Polygon and Eurogamer openly reported on the existence of this demo. Personally, I do think it's too soon to have a Breath of the Wild remaster, even though by 2025 that is going to be unbelievably 8 years since the original game. And while I don't really want to see this happen, I do think it could be the most likely option, given Nintendo's short time frame for the release of the Switch 2, and wanting to have something to release in the Zelda franchise next to its new flagship console. Well, next up we've got the option for a brand new 3D Zelda game, and this is likely to be years away at this point, perhaps even more so given it's probably going to have a new art style and run on a new platform, meaning the developers are going to have to start from scratch. Tears of the Kingdom had the advantage of being built on the Breath of the Wild engine, and that still took 5 to 6 years to develop. Nintendo are likely to take their time with their next 3D Zelda game. Nintendo have also alluded to open world being their genre of choice for 3D Zelda games, although we have seen a lot of criticism of dungeons, breakable weapons, and definitely a lackluster story in the past two entries with Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. So can Nintendo pull off an open world Zelda game with classic style dungeons and a better story? It seems like that is exactly what people want, but is that even possible? Let me know in the comments what you think. Well, finally, I'd like to throw out the prospect of another sequel, this time to Majora's Mask. It doesn't have to be a direct sequel per se, just capture that spirit of the original. Now, I'm currently playing through the game, and it has to be one of the weirdest, yet most wonderful Zelda experiences in the franchise. I would love to see the return of characters from Termina, capture that feeling of the moon falling and that menacing Skull Kid or the Happy Mask Salesman. Now, if you haven't played Majora's Mask, maybe you've come into the Zelda franchise recently, through Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, I would 100% recommend going back to play Majora's Mask. It is absolutely fantastic. Plus, let's hope Nintendo creates a spiritual sequel in the not too distant future. Well, next up, I asked you, the Triforce Times community, what you wanted to see from the next Zelda game, and you came back to me with your comments. So first of all, we've got Matt Potasnik 1195, and Matt says the actual imprisoning war would be nice, and I definitely think, Matt, that is a very, very good idea. I do think that would be a really, really good story. Next up, Solid Me Boy 5487 says open world, classic dungeons, and a story that can't spoil itself just by exploring the open world. And that is something that comes up quite a lot, so better dungeons or classic dungeons. So I assume there with classic dungeons you mean when you're getting an item in that dungeon, going through the dungeon and completing that dungeon with the item. I would definitely like to see that myself. Well, Codster279 says classic dungeons and don't repeat the same design. And that is probably alluding to Breath of the Wild, so thank you, Codster. Definitely like your suggestion there, and a lot of people have written in saying classic dungeons, so there's definitely a running theme. Next up we got Astutin Documentat, and they say the best graphics, the best gameplay, the best story, just like Ocarina of Time was in its moment. And absolutely right there, it is interesting to go back to Ocarina of Time and think, they were the best graphics, it was the best gameplay, it was groundbreaking in its day. I would like to see that game again, but you're absolutely right, we want to capture the spirit of Ocarina of Time and turn that into a new game. So thank you for writing in with your comment. Next up we've got ZomGoat5333 says open world with classic dungeons. So the phrase classic dungeons has come back there once again. But open world with classic dungeons, that is going to be the challenge. That is the $64 million question. Can Nintendo pull off open world and classic dungeons That really remains to be seen. Next up we got GG Bets, and GG says more interaction between races, cities and outposts, mentions of other lands and also language barriers as well. So other lands, really like that idea. More interaction between races and cities as well, that also sounds good. That would have to be a massive open world. I would actually like to see Nintendo take inspiration from Elden Ring. That game was absolutely huge, and it'd be great to see Hyrule expanded with new towns and new races. So GG Bets really like that idea. Next up we got Dark Dragon Medea 705 says bigger world map, yes, but also bring back classic old school style dungeons and add more than 4, like at least 8 would be good. And that is true. In the most recent open world games we've seen 4 or 5 dungeons, and I recently went back to Ocarina of Time, and in that game there's so many dungeons. There's at least 8 or 9, I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's loads of dungeons, and it is funny to see in the open world. And it's funny to see in the open world games you really don't have that many dungeons at all. I guess most of the effort is put into the open world, and therefore not as much effort goes into the dungeons. Well, next up Calvin says, what I really want is a Zelda timeline convergence game, or Breath of the Wild 3 starring Demise as the antagonist. Barring that though, I would like, and then Calvin lists off a few things here. So not to be set in Hyrule, it's got to be super stale at this point. I understand if they would just want to have characters randomly waltz over to some other kingdom and deal with their problems instead, so I'd be fine if they just opted to have the characters end up in an alternate world like Majora's Mask or Phantom Hourglass, or if they set the entire game in the sky or the depths, or if they pulled a Wind Waker and have something terrible happen where Hyrule used to be. Ganon is also starting to feel stale, so give us another villain. The return of someone like Majora or Null would be awesome, and I feel like Demise should return fully at some point, but if they invited someone brand new entirely, I'd be equally stoked. Also, next up, respect the lore and the timeline. The game can do its own thing, but it shouldn't trash what came before. And also linear storytelling, so even if the game isn't linear, the story should be. No more weird memories, keep things here and now, and give us everything in the proper order, and while we're at it, make the lore and the story actually good. Proper items, so just because your game is open air doesn't mean it would hurt to have more special key items that can help you in certain regions. The Zora armor comes to mind, more stuff like that. We've got proper dungeons, so classic style of lock and key progression, and puzzles that don't have a million solutions and ways to cheese or ignore them, and also reasonable game progression. I love the big open world, but maybe don't let the player unlock the final boss right at the start. Maybe have dungeons unlock in groups like Echoes of Wisdom or A Link Between Worlds, rather than have them all available from the start. And finally, still have lots of awesome stuff like they did with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Even if I did ask for something quite different with all my other requests, those games were awesome, and I want a lot of the feeling of discovery and freedom to continue on the next game. Well, thank you, Calvin. That was a very good comment there. Loads of really fantastic ideas, and I appreciate you watching and commenting. And finally, we've got Klaatu Barada 1979, and they say better dungeons with dungeon items. And dungeons is definitely a theme that comes up a lot in a lot of comments, so hopefully Nintendo are going to pull their finger out and create some awesome dungeons in the future. Well, let me know what you think in the comments, but that is it for this video today and this discussion on what will the next Legend of Zelda game be. And if I didn't go through your comment and you want to put a new comment down below and let me know what you want to see from the next Zelda game, I would love to hear what you think. But that is it for the video today, and thank you so much for watching or for listening. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below for even more Zelda content here on Triforce Times. You can also like the video and share the video too, that would help me out here on the channel. Thanks again, I'll see you soon. Well, this video is brought to you by Triforce Times Backstage. This is available through Patreon or YouTube membership, and you're going to get exclusive benefits, plus you'll be able to go above and beyond to support Triforce Times. Free content is core to Triforce Times, and you can continue to enjoy these videos that you know and love. However, if you want to enjoy the benefits like early access, our community Discord, shoutouts in the credits of videos, content polls and exclusive videos, then select the tier that is right for you and join Triforce Times Backstage today. So help me make Triforce Times be even bigger and better, plus you're going to get some added benefits for a small fee every month. Well, thank you for listening, and now it's time to go back to the video.